Hi everyone, my name is Erin and I'm a librarian at Hop Hog Public Library, and today we are going to learn how to make a fairy house out of a dairy carton. So fairies are lots of fun. You might want to build a fairy house because you really like fairies, or you want to see if one will come, or maybe you just want to play with one with your Legos. You can do that too. And there are lots and lots of ways to make a fairy house. But like I said, today we're going to learn how to make one using a dairy carton. This is a half and half carton. You can also use a milk carton that's been cut in half. This is an example of an indoor fairy house, and I actually used a regular milk carton and I cut it in half. So you can have a grown-up cut that in half for you and just use that. The most important thing you want to do first before you start doing anything with your milk carton or dairy carton for your fairy house is you need to clean it out. So once it's empty, either you can do it or you can have a grown-up do it. You want to fill it with water and some soap and really give it a good shake and dump it out and rinse it a bunch of times, because if you have something like half and half or milk and it gets warm, it doesn't smell very good, and the fairies definitely won't want to come to your house. So that's the first thing. You're going to want to clean it out. And then today we're going to talk about two different ways to build a fairy house. One is an outdoor fairy house, this is the one that I made. You can make an outdoor fairy house out of anything, essentially any kind of natural material. The reason you don't want to use something like buttons or ribbons or anything like that for an outdoor one is you don't want any animals to get a hold of it, and we don't want anything getting sick. So definitely try to use natural materials if you're going to put your fairy house outside. So we're going to talk about building this one, and then we're also going to talk about an indoor fairy house. And if you do an indoor fairy house, you actually have a lot of flexibility. You can decorate it with anything you want. I chose paper because it's pretty easy and most people have paper in their home. And it is the easier fairy house to make. So this is the fairy house we're going to talk about making first. You're going to need, like I said, you're going to need a milk carton. You're going to want to make sure that you really clean it out really well, let it dry. And then you're also going to need paper. You can use any kind of paper you would like. You can even use old wrapping paper if you want. If you have a grown-up in the house that has a gift bag that they don't want anymore, you can use that. Any kind of paper you want. You're also going to need glue for the indoor fairy house that I'm going to be showing you. The easiest kind of glue is a glue stick. You can also use white school glue if you want to use that. You're also going to need scissors to cut the paper. And then you're going to need anything you want to decorate it with, whether it be markers, paints, glitter glue, anything you'd like to decorate your house with. So let's get started with our indoor fairy house. Now, like I said, first you're going to need paper. I'm choosing to do yellow. And you'll notice if I take the milk carton here and I wrap it in the paper, it's definitely way too big. So what we want to do first is we want the paper to come up to about here on the milk carton. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the top of the milk carton about here, and then I'm going to take a pencil and kind of make a line right here so I know about how high it has to be. Because I'm the type of person that likes things to be really super straight, or try to, I am going to use a ruler just to kind of draw a line. And then you just cut the piece of paper so that it's the same height as the milk carton, however high you'd like to make it go. Now, you don't have to use one piece of paper if you want. You can always do strips of different colors if you want to make it like a rainbow. It's up to you. So now you'll see if I hold this here and I go like this, it's about the height where we want it to be. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap the half and half, or whatever container you have, with the paper, and it's going to go around like this. Now, is it going to stay like that? It's not, because we haven't glued it yet, right? So what you're going to want to do is get out your, now I use stick glue to do this because it actually stays really well. I wasn't expecting that, but when I tried it out, it did. So you're going to want to get glue all along your paper just to cover it. You don't want to go too crazy, but you definitely want to have glue there. You're going to stand up your carton and then stand up your paper. Now, it's important to decide which side you want your front to be. If you want your the little knob here, which I usually think of as a sunroof for the fairies, on the front of the back. I'm going to actually put it in the front of this house. So you're going to want to stand up your carton and then just kind of wrap this around the back and really kind of press it. Press it as well as you can. Kind of rub it and press it because you want that glue to connect the paper together with the carton. Okay, so we're rubbing that together, and then if you want, before you do anything else, you could take, you notice how you have this end in the back, the little seam. If you want to add a little more glue, if you didn't get enough, you could always put a little bit more glue in here, because sometimes you do need a little more glue on the ends. So, got a little more glue there. And then if you want to leave it to dry for a few minutes, just kind of down like that on that area where the seam is, you can, before you start decorating. So now that this has had a little bit of time to dry, we're going to put some paper on the top here. Again, you don't have to do it like that. You can decorate it however you'd like. What I did before I did anything else was I cut this off. This is a very high point up here, so I decided to just take it down a little bit. So I cut it with actually these scissors here. You might find it a little difficult to cut through, so if you have a problem, you can give it to an adult and they can cut it with larger scissors. But again, you don't have to do that. So I cut the paper similar to the way I cut the paper for the bottom. I kind of held some paper up to it and made some kind of basic lines, a little larger than this, and then kind of sized it so it would fit fairly neatly on here. So I'm going to get some glue onto that and glue that on. Okay, and then for the other side now, it's up to you whether or not you want this to be able to be opened or even seen. If you want, you could just put paper over it. I kind of like the idea, like I said, of having it in the front, and I put flowers and things in it. So an easy way to cut around this is you size the paper similar to the way you did for this side. You put that paper over it. You kind of draw a circle just by feeling kind of where the cap is, and then fold it and cut like this. See, I folded it and cut it like that. And then just make sure it kind of fits on there. You might have to cut it a few times. It did take me a couple of times. Actually, I think I have that upside down. I did. Okay. And so once it fits pretty well and you're happy with it, you can glue it just like you glued everything else. Okay. So we're going to get that on and glue that. Now you'll notice how this is up here. You can always trim that a little bit. You also don't have to just have paper up there. If you want to decorate something else up there, you can. But if you do it like this way, until this dries, what can be helpful is if you have clothespins or if you have like little chip clips, anything that can clip onto here that can kind of keep this together so it can dry and not pop off. I wanted to show you really quickly, for this house, instead of having the paper come all the way up, I actually didn't cut the top off of the dairy carton. I used craft sticks and glued them using white school glue, and then used, actually I think I used chip clips to hold them on there because otherwise they would pop off. So they were very helpful in having that dry. So that's another option. Instead of doing just the paper over this, you can do it like that. So from here you can let this dry. I'm just going to go through a couple more things and then we'll move on to the natural material fairy house. So you're going to wonder how a fairy is going to get in here. So here's the thing about fairies. You actually don't have to cut out a door. If you'd like to have a door, an open door, especially if you want to play with this for other reasons, you absolutely can. What you can do is you can ask an adult you can kind of draw the door for them and they can cut it out for you because they're going to need either like an X-Acto knife or something like that. It can be a little difficult getting through the carton, but one of the great things about fairies is that fairies are magic. And so what you can actually do is, as long as you draw a door, which I'm going to draw a door right now. I got some marker. It's one of my favorite markers. It's a little bit shimmery. I'm going to draw a door. So, and there's a door. And if you draw, as long as you draw a door, a fairy can get into the house. So you actually don't have to cut it. So from here, basically you can decorate it any way you want. So the house that I already made, I'll show you. So as you can see, I did the craft sticks on the top instead of just using the paper. I have glitter glue, so I used glitter glue around the door and on the door. I wrote Fairies Welcome on the top. I did some drawing on here, but you can do whatever you want. You can use stickers, you can paint, you could use puffy little sticker things, whatever you'd like to do, however you'd like to decorate it. And then you have, once everything is dry and ready, and again, you could also do, on the sides. I didn't do very much on the side of the house here. I did do a little window, but I haven't gotten to that yet. I didn't get to decorating the side of the house yet. But you can decorate it however you want, and then you have a beautiful indoor fairy house. So the second type of house I wanted to show you how to make today as a fairy house is an outdoor fairy house. So again, this is the outdoor fairy house that I made. You'll notice that it's got all natural materials on it. It's got twigs, feathers, little pine cones, little pine needles. These are all things I either found in my yard or on walks. And the reason that if you're going to put something outside for the fairies that you only use natural materials is, again, you don't want any little animals or anything getting a hold of something that might make them sick. So you want to kind of keep it natural, keep it non-toxic. Another thing that you need to really think about is when you bring any of these materials into your house to make your fairy house, you want to kind of shake them out. You want to make sure there are no little bugs in them or anything like that. You also want to ask mom or dad about any leaves that you might want to use to make sure that they're not poison ivy or something like that, because you definitely don't want that. So this house, I just used twigs. I found pine needles on a walk. You don't have to build it like that again. You can build it however you want. But today I'm going to show you how to use the twigs or craft sticks. So what you're going to need is, you're going to need your dairy carton, again, clean and dry. You're going to need some kind of glue, which I used white school glue. It actually worked much better than I thought it would. If you want to use another glue, you can, but again, it's really good to use something non-toxic if you're going to be putting it outside. And for the outside of the house, you can either find twigs, things like that in your yard, or if you don't have anything like that and you have craft sticks, you can use craft sticks. So let's go over how to make the outdoor fairy house. Now, before you can start making the natural fairy house, you have a couple of decisions to make. The one is whether or not you want to use craft sticks or twigs. The next is what direction you want to go in, and the last is whether or not you want to cut out doors or windows. So the first decision, craft sticks versus twigs, is entirely up to you. If you use craft sticks, essentially these are smaller craft sticks. If I put them up this way, you don't really have to cut them, and you just kind of line them along. I'm going to show you with the twigs how to do that. If you put them this way, you will have to cut them, and that's definitely something you would need help with from an adult. If you do cut them, I did cut this one, you can see how then it lines up to about here. So that's entirely up to you whether or not you want to do that. If you want to use sticks, you have the same thing. You could go into your yard and find twigs, and then you kind of want to measure how high you want them. So I wanted them to come to about here. So I took twigs and I either cut them, which I would definitely have an adult help you cut them, or you can actually very easily snap them, like this one. This one is already, well, it's too short, but I'll show you how easy it is to snap it. You could essentially get it to the size you want it to get, and then just snap it right in the area you want, instead of having to ask mom or dad to cut anything. But if you want it to be, really close in size, I would definitely ask mom or dad to cut them for you. So now before you start gluing anything, make sure you have enough sticks to cover, or sticks or craft sticks to cover a whole one side. Make sure they're all sized the way you want them to, and then take however many it takes to cover the one side and kind of put them over on the side. So I had already measured all of this out, and I have mine actually over here. That way I know I have enough and I don't have glue on here and I'm not, oh my God, I don't have any more sticks. Make sure you have enough sticks and make sure they're all sized. Now before you start gluing anything, you come again to the decision of a door. Now if you want to cut out doors or windows, you definitely need to cut that out before you start gluing anything. And then you need to size it to make sure it works out size-wise. So like here, you can see that these sticks are definitely longer than these. I basically kind of measured it to see how high this was, and I either cut them or I just snapped them. Again, if you do decide to cut them, have an adult help you cut them. So let me show you how quickly to glue this on. So now I have all my sticks ready. I'm going to take, I use just white school glue. It actually worked really well. It does take a little while to dry, but it's stayed on beautifully. So you're going to cover about half of the container with glue. You'll see how I'm not really coating it horribly, but I want a decent coating. And then I'm going to take the sticks and just line them up on here. Sometimes you might have to roll it a little bit to get it the size you want. You also want to make sure that you get sticks that are fairly straight, like the one I have right now in my hand has a little bit of a curve to it. It is kind of nice when they're straighter because they're easier to lay down, and then you don't get spaces where you can see the dairy container itself. So that's about as far as I'm going to get with that. And then you just take some more glue and go along the side here. And then just keep adding the sticks until you get to the end. Now this is going to need to stay like this. Okay. Now if you want, if you have little pieces of twigs or anything like that, you could always fill in that. You could see how there are some gaps where you can still see the dairy container. You can fill those in. I've seen videos where people have filled that with moss. You can always just fill it with little pieces of twig, or you don't have to do anything. You can leave it like that. This is going to have to dry for at least 2 to 3 hours. I let mine dry overnight before I did the next section, only because I didn't want it to fall off, and it just made it easier to work with. So once you've finished getting the twigs all the way around the house, like this is my completed house here, you can decide about any kind of decoration you want to do, and then about what you put on the top. Now, I put pine needles on the top of mine because I happened to find them on a walk, and I really love pine trees. So if you do have something like this available or you find them, you can use them. The way I did it was I took 2 of the pine needles and then I tied them together with a little bit of string, and then I draped them over the top like this and put a little bit of glue down on the top of the dairy carton and kind of held it down. Now it's not going to stay in here forever. It's not the most secure top I could have put on here, but I do really love them. Now anything you decide to glue on here, just like with the indoor fairy house, but probably more importantly, you really want to give it a little bit of time for the glue to set. Like if you decide to do this with the pine needles, you could put them all here and put some glue down on the top. And I would definitely leave it overnight just to make sure it dries and it's set before you start wiggling it around and doing anything else. Just like the front, I had found these little pine cones and I glued it on, and essentially I put some white glue down. I held it down with my finger for, I probably counted to about 30, and then let it go and let it dry like this for several hours. That way it it has time to dry. It does take a little bit of time for the glue to dry, so you don't want to just kind of shove it on there and be like, oh, and shake it around. It's going to fall off. You want to, this house is a little bit more time consuming to build, but it is nice to have something like this outside for the outdoor fairies. So this is an end result of an outdoor fairy house. Again, you can make it however you want. You could use craft sticks, you can use other sticks, you can use shells. There's so many different natural things that you can use. Just try not to pluck anything, or make sure you ask an adult about anything you're unsure about, because we don't want poison ivy on anyone's hands. So that's the end of this tutorial on building a fairy house. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed building the fairy houses, and I'm hoping I get some fairy folk in my house and in my yard. If you have any questions or comments, definitely get in touch with the library. And if you want to learn more about fairies, or just want to watch things or read about fairies, the library has lots of books and videos about fairies. So definitely check the catalog, or you can call and speak to a librarian like myself and ask about fairy books in the library. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.